Now, as high interest rates and a weaker economy take their toll, the Ombud for banking services has seen an increase in the complaints relating to the repossession of vehicles by the bank. Now, it is important to understand what your rights are, but also what your responsibilities are as well. For your weekly dose of tips on your personal finance, we're joined this morning by personal finance journalist Maya Fisher-French. Maya, a very good evening. Well, morning to you, not quite evening.
Morning, hopefully.
Hopefully morning, just the start of the day.
Morning.
Look, Maya, it's a really tough time for consumers right now. People are stretched on all ends, higher interest rates. There's the issue of joblessness and losing jobs, the economy not doing very well. So as can be expected and as can be seen, people are starting in some places to lose their possessions. And one of those possessions that people are starting to lose are their cars. How can one actually even avoid that before we even get to that point of the bank coming to knock on your door saying, we want the keys?
You have to have a conversation with the bank. It starts with that. And that's really important. Just thinking that if you just avoid the calls and all of that, they won't come for the car. Ultimately, the car actually belongs to the bank. They have ownership of that car until the loan is fully paid. And they have every right to come and repossess the car. Now, we can unpack what that right is and when they cross the line. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to start the conversation. So in many cases, the bank may give you a payment break. So you may be able to take a break on the payment for a few months or pay a lower installment. Those always have consequences. You always have to end up paying the debt for longer. But I think if you are in that position, rather than going to a point where the bank is now bringing judgments against you and repossessing the vehicle, when you realize you've reached a point where you can no longer keep the car, rather keep the control of it and sell it and try and meet those repayments that way. Because I think it's when people just hold on in the hope that some miracle will happen, that now that the negative stuff starts, now the judgment starts, and those have such huge implications going forward for you. So I think that's it. It's about when do you get realistic about it and know that you've reached a point of no return and you do need to sell the car.
And what is the grace period that a bank will give you before they actually start wanting payment? Is it 3 months, 4 months, 5 months?
Well,
how long is a piece of string?
Technically, well, not really. Technically, they're allowed to issue a Section 129 notice, a letter of demand, after 20 days of being in arrears. So actually, that's the leeway, 20 days. But generally what happens is the bank will start a conversation. They'll contact you. If you respond, then you may say, listen, sorry, I've been really struggling this month. Next month, can we? So they may start a conversation in the beginning. And whilst you're having that conversation, and as long as you're trying to meet those repayments, you may stall the process. But technically, legally, yes, 20 days, they can issue this Section 129, which is a letter of demand. And that then starts the whole process. Then there's the summons that can be issued by the sheriff of the court, then a judgment against you. So it isn't, the process takes time. And I think I've seen this where people think the process has gone quiet. So they get the letter of demand and they ignore it, and then they think they don't hear anything again. But in the background, the bank's going to the courts. They're getting the judgments. You just don't realize that all of that's happening. And then one day you've got the sheriff standing at your door saying, here the paperwork is, we're coming to take your car. So don't think because the bank's gone quiet that, that this is not happening in the background.
If, Maya, for example, a person says, look, I don't have 10,000 Rand a month or whatever the figure might be, but I've got 5,000 Rand. Is that something that you can approach the bank with? Is that something that they are open to considering?
A lot of it depends on the financing of the car. And very sadly, no matter how much I warn people, do not take a 72-month repayment with a residual, right? Because then you've got very little room to move. If you have a shorter loan period, you may be able to say to the bank, can I extend my loan period? But they're not going to extend it past the 72 months. So it is also about where you are in the cycle. So if the car is relatively new and you've got a long period ahead of you and you haven't really paid back much of the car, you don't have much negotiating power. But maybe you're 2 years, 3 years into the repayment, you've been a good payer, you can come to the bank and say, look, what are my options? So I think a lot of it is about, your particular situation and where you are in that. And I think that is important. But I think also there is this bit of a misconception that I come across where people say, oh, I'll just give the keys back to the bank because the bank owns the car, remember? it doesn't mean that you don't have to pay back the debt. So, the bank will just auction the car, whatever shortfall there is, you will still be liable for. So, these are not, car agreements are not easy things to exit, which is why I'm always concerned that people take such long periods of debt on their cars. Those long loan agreements make the value of the car to before you've reached break even, before the car's worth what you can sell it for, what you owe it. So what you owe on it is often more than what you can sell it for at least the first 3 years. It makes you very difficult to trade out of that agreement.
So, Maya, as I let you go this morning, what are the legitimate steps that a bank, for example, would take when they are going to repossess your car? Because we've also heard of scams, Maya, where somebody comes to your house and they say, we're from the bank to repossess your car. You let your car go only to find out actually that wasn't the bank and you're still liable.
That has become an increasing, again, of all the fraud that's happening. So I think it's very important to understand that first thing is don't be tricked into giving up your car. You have got something called voluntary surrender. And that can be a positive thing. You say, listen, I'm handing my car back. The bank will put it on auction and all that. But you can't be tricked into it. So the bank does have to follow due process if they're going to repossess your car. So they have to, as I mentioned, they have to issue the Section 129 notice. This notice goes to your registered address on that legal agreement. So people often say, well, I didn't get it because I live somewhere else, so I didn't receive it, therefore it's not valid. Sorry, the address that you gave the bank is the address that the courts will consider as having received the document. So you've now received the document, or it's been delivered to that address. Then there's a summons served by the sheriff of the court. As I said, a judgment's then granted, and then the sheriff arrives at your house. Please get proof that it is a sheriff of the court. Ask for confirmation of identity. Also ask, they must have the original court order stating that the vehicle can be repossessed. And I would even go so far, because these things can even be faked, as to contacting the bank and saying, I've got this sheriff here. This is what the court order says. Is this legitimate? Is this from the bank? Because that is obviously becoming an increasing scam that we are coming across.
Maya, thank you so much. Very much needed information during these really tough times. Thank you for the insight. I think with that information, with that knowledge, one is better able to at least control the situation as much as you possibly can. And as Maya says, don't run away. Take the calls, make arrangements, speak to the bank. And if you do need to sell, then sell. Keep the control on your side as much as you possibly can. That's personal finance journalist there, Maya Fisher-French.